Hello, my fellow ETHStakers. I am Invetica.eth, and this is the Validator Workshop Series. Follow along as I set up and configure an Ethereum validator from scratch. Now, for non-technical users, this can be an incredibly intimidating experience, since running a validator requires a deposit of 32 ETH, which the current market value of that is roughly $54,000 as of today, and also requires the use of the command line. Now, for these reasons, we'll be using Samir Esat's guides to set up and configure our validator. By utilizing the guides developed by Samir, we'll be provided in-depth explanations of what we're building, along with the commands to easily copy and paste to the command line. Additionally, Samir's guides are well maintained and updated to include steps to maintain your validator over time. Also, these guides have been funded by the Ethereum Foundation and are considered an industry standard. For this recording, we'll be deploying an Ethereum validator on the Pyrmont testnet. If this is your first time running a validator, it's good practice to start on a testnet for a few weeks to ensure you understand what it is you're doing and verify that the setup is working properly before deploying onto mainnet. Now, we are assuming that you have the necessary prerequisites for running your validator, specifically having already requested at least 33 Goerli ETH, opened up a MetaMask account, and have a dedicated machine for staking with a fresh installation of Ubuntu Desktop. If you don't, the video tutorial for those steps are linked in the description of this video. For this video tutorial, we'll be focusing specifically on configuring and running an Ethereum Geth node, generating and funding the validator keys, importing those keys to the ETH2 client, and finally installing and configuring the ETH2 client itself. So without further ado, let's get into it. The first thing we're going to do is create a bit of a workstation here for setting up our validator. So I'm going to open up a browser session, pull it over to the side here, and then pull up Samir Esat's guide. Now this is specifically for the Lighthouse Client. Now that we have that, I'm going to go over here, and then I'm just going to type the word term, and that will bring up the terminal session. Click on that. And then I'm going to open up the show applications icon in the bottom left hand corner and then type text to bring up a text editor. And these will be the three things that we'll use the most. All right, and one thing to note before we get too ahead of ourselves, all of the links and resources mentioned in this tutorial are all in the description of this video. So if you're following along in step with this guide, and you're not sure where we're getting the information from, just look at the description of this video and everything should be there. Scrolling through Samir's guide, we can see that he's got all of the information that you would need starting from scratch. There are a few warnings in here, and just to reiterate this as well, this is for the Pyrmont testnet. This is not for mainnet. If you already are familiar with setting up a validator and just want some extra instructions deploying to mainnet, there are a separate set of instructions for that. Links to those in the description. Now, a few items to note that are inside of this guide, but outside of the scope for this video tutorial. One of these being step 0, which is connecting to the server. Since we're not remoting in, this step is not applicable to us. So we're going to go ahead and skip over that. However, the first step we will do is updating our system. We've got two commands here. So we're simply going to copy this command and paste it into our terminal session. We're going to hit enter and then supply our administrative password. All right, looks like our first update command has completed. Let's go ahead and copy the second one and go ahead and run that. One thing to note for those of you who aren't familiar or used to working in the command line, the copy and paste instructions here, we copy everything from the right of the $sign here. This just signifies that it's a new command to copy and paste. So we're not actually copying the entire $sign with it, just everything to the right of it. So let's go ahead and copy this one and paste into our command line and then hit enter. Okay, looks like our system has completely updated. Let's go ahead and clear our screen by typing the word clear and then hitting enter. Now the next step in Samir's guide is to secure the system by configuring the firewall and allowing SSH. We're actually going to skip over these steps as they are outside of the scope for this video. However, if it's something you're interested in and want remote access to your machines, I recommend following these steps. One thing, however, we do want to follow is opening up the applicable ports for both the ETH1 and ETH2 nodes. And we'll do that by opening up ports 30303 and port 9000. So let's go ahead and copy and paste these commands into our terminal. We can see that that was accepted. And let's go ahead and open up the Lighthouse port 9000. Let's just copy and paste that command and hit enter. And we can see that is accepted as well. Now there are instructions on opening up the ports for Grafana and Prometheus, which are a dashboard and monitoring tools. Again, these are also outside of the scope of this video. We simply want to show the instructions on how to spin up a validator node and nothing more. Now what we're going to do is clear our screen by typing clear and hitting enter. And now it's time to install and run the Go Ethereum node, or Geth. The first step is to download the binary packages. So let's go ahead and copy this command and hit enter. Now we're going to make sure we have the latest version. So let's go ahead and run the update command. And let's clear our screen one more time. And finally, we're going to do the install. So sudo apt install geth, copy and paste that, and enter. Now continuing along with Somer's guide, let's first clear our screen. Now let's get into this just briefly before issuing the next few commands. And we can see here by the title, we're going to run Go Ethereum as a background service. Now effectively, what's going on here is we're making a small background service. You can consider this like an application or a program. We're making a very small application that runs in the background and is intelligent enough to know if the machine is on or off. So if, for example, the machine, your staking node, is rebooted, all of the ETH1, ETH2, Beaconchain will reboot and run in the background. This makes sure that you're not missing any attestations or block proposals or any potential rewards for your staking node. So let's go ahead and start that process. This begins by creating the user and applying the applicable permissions for those users. So let's run this first command, just copy and paste, hit enter. Now what we want to do is create the directory for all of the data to go into for our ETH1 node. We're going to make a directory, just copy and paste that here. And then just set the permissions to make sure that we have access to that directory that we just created. Again, just copy and paste into the terminal. Now here's where we actually create the system service. Let's go ahead and copy and paste this. What you're going to notice is once you hit enter, it's going to open a text editor called Nano. If we scroll slightly more, we'll see the exact copy and paste this configuration from the guide into this text editor. We may have to do some slight editing of the text based on the guide. So let's go ahead and do that real quick. And what this is doing is setting the parameters for the systemd program to run in the background, making sure that it knows how and where to run. We can see here that we have copied and pasted everything correctly. So to save this, we're going to hit Control X. It's going to ask us if we do in fact want to save. We do. So let's hit Y and then hit enter to save the document. Okay. For further explanation as to the different parameters and the flags within the systemd service, please read on into the guide where Somer goes on to explain those things. Moving right along, let's go ahead and reload the systemd service to apply the changes that we just made. So let's copy and paste this restart command. And now what we can do is start our ETH1 Geth node. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this start command. And let's in fact verify that the Geth node is actually running by issuing this status command. And there we go. We've got the bright green dot. The service is active and running, so we can safely assume that our ETH1 Geth node is live and processing. To exit this screen, hit Control C, and let's type in clear and hit enter. The last thing we want to do in relation to Geth is just copy this command here. What this is doing is specifically telling the system to automatically restart the service if rebooted. So let's just copy and paste that. And there we go. Now it is worth noting here that the ETH1 node needs to fully sync in order for the ETH2 node to sync as well. And we can monitor that progress by issuing this command. We can do that here by looking at it. And here we can see that right now we're just trying to find peers on the network. Once we have found the minimum amount of peers on the network, our ETH1 node will begin processing blocks and syncing data with the ETH1 chain. Now, until the ETH1 node fully syncs, the ETH2 node will not be able to. So we'll be waiting on this, but we can still continue on while this is syncing in the background because we made that service. Simply hit Control-C and we'll clear our screen. And now the ETH1 node will be running in the background while we continue on building out our validator. Now what we're going to do is install our ETH2 client, and specifically Lighthouse in this case. And what we're going to do is first install the dependencies, and we're going to run these two commands here. Let's go ahead and do that. Looks like that is complete. Let's now run the second command. And we're just going to copy and paste and hit enter. Next, there are a number of packages we need to install in order for Lighthouse to run. So let's go ahead and clear our screen again. And then we're going to run this command which installs all of the necessary packages. Let's go ahead and run that. All right, now that we have the necessary software in order to install and build Lighthouse, let's go ahead and do that. Let's first clear our screen and then scroll down here. And we're going to change our directory using CD and then tilde. Now we are going to verify that we have the latest version. So let's right click new tab here and verify that the latest version of Lighthouse is 1.2.1. So that's where we're going to adjust this here. So let's go ahead and copy this into our text editor. And then we're just going to change 1.0.0 to this version, which is 1.2.1. And let's go ahead and copy and paste this into our command line. All right, looks like that is completed. So let's go ahead and issue this last command, which is changing into the Lighthouse directory. And then we're going to just type the command make. Now, depending on your hardware, this could take quite a while. So go ahead and take a break, get a beverage, stretch your legs, and let's resume back once this is completed. All right, looks like our machine has finished compiling. Next, what we're going to do is generate our validator keys using the deposit CLI. So let's go ahead and scroll down to these commands. First, let's go ahead and change into our home directory. Let's just clear our screen. Then we're going to copy this curl command, which is going to download the deposit CLI program. All right, that downloaded successfully. Let's go ahead and unpack it. And then change directories into the folder that we just unpacked. And just a quick house cleaning item here. We're just going to remove the downloaded package that we no longer need. And we're all set. Now what we're going to do is run the deposit CLI program. It's effectively a text-based wizard that sets up your deposit keys sets up your deposit file and your key store file. So what we're going to do is just copy and paste this, but we're actually going to paste this in our text document first. The reason for that is there's a variable here that we need to replace, and that is the number of validators that we're going to be running. Now for this tutorial, we're just going to focus on a single validator. However, that being said, if you were to run multiple validators, this is where you would change that number. Likewise, you can see the chain flag here. We're running on Pyrmont. If you were to run this on mainnet, you'd simply replace that text with a mainnet. So let's go ahead and copy this and run this on our command line. And we can see that we're being prompted to supply a password. Let's go ahead and do that. And you can see that the deposit CLI has generated a seed phrase for us. We're going to go ahead and copy this in our text document. Now it is worth pausing here for just a moment to reiterate that you would never share this seed phrase for any reason. Effectively, whoever holds your seed phrase owns rights to your validator and thus your Ether. So let's go ahead and click Enter to continue. The deposit CLI is going to ask to confirm that we have in fact written down our seed phrase. We're going to just copy and paste that in, and it looks like that's completed. Now the deposit CLI is going to generate our key stores and deposits, which it just finished now. And then we're going to write down this location. This is where the two files are going to be stored. So we're just going to put that in our text document, and we'll refer to that later. Let's go ahead and press Enter, and then continue on with our guide. Next, what we're going to do is fund our validator keys. So let's head on over to pyrmont.launchpad.ethereum.org. And what we're going to do is click on Become a Validator. Now we are going to click through these fairly quickly. However, I would make sure that if you're doing this at home, you take your time and read through these screens so you fully grasp the responsibilities and risks involved for running an Ethereum validator node. So let's go ahead and click Continue. I'm going to go through these fairly quickly. We'll select Geth, then hit Continue. This is for Lighthouse. We'll hit Continue. Now what we're going to do is supply the number of validators that we're going to be running. Now for the sake of this demonstration, we're going to be doing one validator. The rest of these can remain the defaults. And then we will confirm that we are keeping our seed phrase in a safe place and hit Continue. Now what we're going to do is navigate to this directory location. And we can do that fairly easily by opening up a file explorer. And we can see it here. So we're already in the home directory. There's the ETH2 deposit CLI folder. Let's click into that. Then the validator keys folder. And what the Launchpad is asking for here is our deposit data. And our deposit data file is right here. So let's go ahead and click and drag that. And we have successfully completed that step. Now let's go ahead and continue. It's going to ask us to connect a wallet in order to fund that deposit. So let's go ahead and click on MetaMask, input our MetaMask password. We've connected our MetaMask wallet, and let's go ahead and click the Continue button. This is just a summary. So yes, in fact, we do want to run one validator node. We understand the risks and responsibilities. So let's go ahead and acknowledge those and then hit Continue. Now what we're going to do is officially deposit our 32 Gurley ETH in this case. However, if this was mainnet, this would be the point at which you would deposit your real 32 Ether. So again, this is test Ether. So let's go ahead and confirm our deposit. It'll open up our MetaMask account for the 32 Gurley ETH. We can verify that here on the Gurley test network and then hit confirm. Looks like the transaction has started. We can track this on EtherScan if we go over here. And looks like our transaction has completed. And there it is. These are all the details of the deposit transaction. Let's go back to our guide. And we're just going to scroll through these screens as we just completed it. Now what we're going to do is create the validator wallet that stores the funds created by our validator. So let's go ahead and first clear our screen and then just run cd and then hit enter. We want to make sure we're in our home directory before running these next commands. So let's go ahead and copy and paste this one to make a directory. Input our password. Now what we're going to do for this one is we're going to copy and paste this command in our text editor. And there are two variables that we need to put in, and that's the specific username for our validator. Now our username is shown here on the command line, which is admin. So we're just going to replace it over here. And then we're going to copy and paste this onto our command prompt. Next, we will change directories into the Lighthouse directory. And then we're going to copy and paste this command in our text editor as well. And the reason for that is you'll notice that there is an additional variable, and it's asking for the specific directory for our validator keys. You'll remember that has been this one right here. This was generated when we ran the deposit CLI. So let's go ahead and replace this over here. And let's go ahead and copy this into our command prompt. Now it's asking us to confirm the key store password. Again, this was set up during the deposit CLI, so let's go ahead and input that password. And we have confirmation that everything is running correctly, so let's continue with the guide. Let's go ahead and clear our screen and then run the following command based off the guide. Next, what we're going to do is configure our ETH2 client. This is going to be very similar to how we set up the ETH1 node, or Geth, in that we have two systems that we're setting up, the beacon node and the validator node, both of which we're going to set up a background process. So let's go ahead and create the user. And we're going to copy and paste this command for creating the directory and then setting the appropriate permissions for that directory. Okay, that all went well. Now let's go ahead and run this command. And let's create and configure the service. Just like before we did with Geth, we're going to run this command, which will open up a text editor. And then based on this guide, we will go ahead and copy and paste this entire block and then slightly modify it for format's sake. And then to save this, we will hit Control X. It's going to ask us if we want to save it. We'll hit Y for yes, and then enter to complete it. Now again, this is the configuration file in order for the beacon node to function. So we'll go ahead and continue on. And then we're going to reload the daemon to apply the changes that we just made. Next, we get to start our beacon node. So let's go ahead and run the start command. Hit enter. And let's verify that it is in fact up by running the status command. And look at that, we are up and running. So to exit the screen, we'll go ahead and hit Control C. Let's go ahead and clear our screen. Next, what we're going to do is run the enable command. This allows the background process to start back up upon reboot. Now, if we want to see the system logs to make sure that the beacon node is processing, we can run this journal command. Let's go ahead and check that out. And we can see that things are processing. Now, everything won't work correctly on here exactly yet because what's happening is your beacon node is actually waiting for your Geth node to fully sync. So until that fully syncs, this won't work properly. However, we can continue setting up the rest of the validator while this runs in the background. Let's go ahead and hit Control C to exit and then clear our screen. Now we're going to do the same thing, but for our validator. So let's go ahead and create the user. Copy and paste that on the command line. We are going to create the directory. We're going to paste that into the command line. And now what we're going to do is the same thing. We're going to run this command, which will open up the text editor. And then we're going to copy and paste this whole block into the text editor and change the formatting on here to make sure that it's in line with what's on the guide. Now, something to note here for the validator is the graffiti tag, and that is right here. This is just an arbitrary string of text that you can put in anything you want, and if and when your validator proposes a new block on the blockchain, it will print whatever you put here as graffiti, sort of like a digital graffiti tag saying that you were here. So let's go ahead and put something funny there, and then we'll do Control X, yes to save, and then enter to exit. There we go. And continuing on. Let's go ahead and run the reload command that applies the changes that we had just made, copy and pasting that into the command line. And next, what we're going to do is start up our validator. So let's go ahead and run the start command. We'll copy and paste that. And let's copy and paste the status to verify that it is in fact running. Hey, look at that. All right, so now we have a fully functional and running validator, beacon node, and Geth node. So to exit this, we're going to go Control C. Let's go ahead and clear our screen. Next, we're going to run the enable command. Again, this is to ensure that if your machine reboots, so to do the background processes. So let's go ahead and run that. And again, we can do the same thing here by running the journal command to look at the logs to make sure that things are processing. In fact, things are. Again, these two will probably, both the beacon and validator node will throw errors until the ETH1 node has properly synced. That is okay. This just verifies that things are functioning. So let's go ahead and Control C to exit and clear our screen again. And that's it. You are now running your very own Ethereum validator node. Now, a couple items to note here. Again, the ETH1 node needs to properly sync, and then at which time your beacon node will start syncing, and then your validator will start picking up. Something also to note, if we go back to our browser here, let's maximize our browser window and go back to the deposit transaction. Now, one thing I want to point out here is the Beaconchain deposit section where you have your validator public key. This is literally your validator number. So if we click into that, we're going to see a couple things. First, we'll see the status of the deposit that we just made. And right now we're seeing that there's a bit of a wait. So in about 15 to 16 hours, we'll formally see that deposit process on the testnet. And the other thing we can do here is if we copy this address, next what we're going to do is go to the Pyrmont.Beaconchain address, and then let's just copy and paste our validator address in there. And now we can see the full status of where our validator is in relation to the test network. So we can see that our deposit has gone through, and now it's going to take, looks like around 15 hours for our validator to be processed into the network and be contributing attestations and proposing blocks. Now, we did cover a lot of information in this tutorial. However, the steps accomplished today only represent a minimally functioning validator. I would highly recommend following all of the security steps in Sameer's guide. Additionally, if you do want to develop a dashboard to monitor your validator, please feel free to follow the instructions provided by Sameer, which are also in the guides. As always, if you run into any issues at all, the ETHStaker community is here to help. Our goal is to be welcoming first and knowledgeable second. There are no silly questions and no question too small. Simply ask and we'll do our best to help. For more in-depth and advanced features, make sure to check out our monthly ETHStaker Validator Workshops. Details on when those are will be hosted on our website at ETHStaker.cc. All right, that's it from me. I'm Envetica.eth, and we'll see you around.